gentlemen,
it's time for Politics with a Punch.
Ringside.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeff Cruier, and welcome to another edition of Ringside. We're going to be jam-packed tonight, going to be talking about the economy. We're talking about local politics and an important ministry, and hope you're going to be able to check out all of these great guests that we have. But let's start with some of the top news stories we're following right here on Ringside. You know, a recent quality of life study was just done by UNO about people in New Orleans and Jefferson, and the number one issue was crime. And we just saw it recently with a tragic incident. A wife of a pastor who has served communities such as Celebration Church and done ministry work in Samoa was just brutally killed by carjackers in New Orleans, pulled out of her car. They ran over her. And this tragic incident has really brought a lot of attention back to our crime problem, and just a reminder that we've got to do something about bringing this crime problem under control in all areas, not just Gentilly, not just Central City. It's really a problem for the whole city. And obviously the survey says it's a problem that needs to be addressed immediately. One thing that's going to be happening immediately up in Washington is we're going to be seeing a new House Speaker. She's won approval from the Democrats, and of course I'm talking about former Speaker, will be Speaker again, Nancy Pelosi. So she has pretty much won the race now that she's got the support of her Democrat delegation. And we're going to have a whole new direction coming from the Congress with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, that's for sure. One thing we need to do before she takes over is we need to have these Republicans up in Congress fund the wall. This is, of course, the border wall that the president ran on. This is the border wall that the American people voted for. This is the border wall we need for our security. It's time to stop the flow of drugs and the flow of weapons and the flow of illegals into this country. And a wall, I think, is the best way we can do that. And finally, you know, it's a Christmas season at the White House. They're decorating, and the First Lady, I think, did a wonderful job of decorating for Christmas. Some beautiful decorations that she put up. But sadly, some on the left have been blasting her, criticizing her decorations, criticizing her taste, criticizing her timing. And it just got me to thinking that this is not something that was done for the former First Lady. She has been treated incredibly poorly by the media. And it's just one more, I think, example of the bias that we see toward this first family. And this is a lady who's a successful businesswoman. She's brilliant. She knows multiple languages. She's someone that has a lot of class and someone that deserves better treatment. When we come back, let's talk about where this economy is going. Our expert, Jim Spiro, going to be joining us next, right here on Ringside. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Good friend is with us now. He is the managing director of the Spiro Group at Morgan Stanley, one of the premier experts on all of these issues that we want to deal with as far as building wealth and how to maintain your wealth and how to navigate all these changes in the economy. And Jim Spiro is now with us here. And Jim, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm fine and delighted to be here as always. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, Jim, thank you for being here. It's just so crazy out there. One day I'm hearing the economy is just booming. The next day I'm hearing, wow, they're warning signs and everybody's worried.
Yeah.
So first of all, maybe we could start at the macro level and then deal with some of these underlying issues. Generally, are we in a good situation right now?
Present tense, I'd say we are in a good situation. I think it's less important to look at a particular point in time and more important to the extent possible to try to look at a continuum and see how things are trending. And I would say that we've gone from a narrative of a year and a half, 2 years ago, where all systems were go. We had the onslaught, if you will, of the tax cut, of the enormous stimulus of corporations benefiting from both of those things, corporate earnings hitting all-time highs. There was a synchronized global recovery. Interest rates were still very, very low. It really was tough to find a fly in the ointment. That's not the case now. Interest rates have come up a little bit, and they'll probably come up a bit more, although I don't think they're going to get to levels that are going to snuff out the entire economy. But they've come up a couple of hundred basis points, and they'll probably come up a bit more. Additionally, what we didn't have a year and a half ago is we obviously have the problems with trade with China predominantly, but also continuing areas of friction regarding trade with some of our European allies. I'd say that's a net negative. The dollar's been very strong. Corporate earnings look like they're starting to peak. You logically are going to have, at best, gridlock in Congress. So we've gone from an all systems go narrative to you could make arguments either way.
So let's look at some of these things. Boy, the market the other day just went crazy when the Fed chair made some good comments about interest rates.
True. I would say, look, I just gave you a litany of potential good things and bad things, but to get down to the two biggest things on the negative side, one is this concern, and I think it's a legitimate concern, but I think it should be mitigated with good common sense, that interest rates are going to go to the moon and it's going to choke off the economy. The reality is wherever they settle out, and I'm referring to the federal funds rate, which is the sort of the benchmark rate the industry uses, wherever they settle out, they're going to be meaningfully lower than they were for probably 40 of the last 50 years, and lots of people made lots of money in lots of ways during that period of time. So I think that's a concern, but I think that is going to be mitigated over time, and to some extent Powell did that with his language yesterday. The second big concern, I think, is with respect to the tariffs. I think that we do have a problem with China. I think the president has identified a real problem. The way we've gone about dealing with it, I'm not a big fan of. I think we should not have picked fights initially with Mexico, with Canada, with Europe. I think that was foolhardy. I think we could have gotten everybody on board because a lot of people share his views about China. And but I think tariffs are a blunt instrument that is a real concern that a lot of people have. And
well,
that
as far as Mexico and Canada, that agreement's already been hatched out, right? I mean, that's done.
It's done to the extent Congress signs it. Congress has to sign it. So it isn't done at all. It's done as far as the president is concerned, but it isn't done as far as legislation.
It needs to be ratified,
Right, but in the absence of ratification, it isn't done.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no word that it's not going to be ratified, is it?
I think the likelihood of it being ratified is more than 50%, but I don't think it's a slam dunk at all. And I think now that you have a Democratic House, I think it's quite likely they're going to be very, very vigorous in trying to extract more terms, and then the president would have to go back to the leaders in Canada and Mexico. So I don't think it's going to be a very smooth ride.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe they can get that done before the Democrats even take office.
I've seen a couple of people pass that as a suggestion. I think it's a wise suggestion. We have this window here of whatever it is, 4, 5, 6 weeks, where in theory that could happen. And I think if the president wants to increase the likelihood of that being signed off on by Congress, we need to get going. I agree with you.
Let's talk about one positive, and that is oil prices. That certainly seems to be in a very good range, down significantly from where it was earlier in the year.
Yes, people should realize, notwithstanding that the U.S. is now arguably the largest or the second largest producer of natural gas liquids, and crude oil in the world, we still import oil. And to the extent that the price of oil goes down, it benefits many more than it harms. It's not particularly good for us here in Louisiana, but this is still
nationally,
nationally it benefits many more than it harms. Not good here in Louisiana, but this is still a fossil fuel-driven economy, so it's more plus than minus.
Now, a lot of people are beating the drums for the president to impose sanctions against Saudi Arabia in retaliation for this journalist being killed. And if that happens, we could see oil prices jump up significantly, right?
We could see them jump up significantly. Again, there's frequently leakage to a lot of these sanctions. That's what's been going on with the Iran sanctions. That's one of the reasons oil prices have dropped. And as to what's the proper course of action with respect to Saudi Arabia, I'm not a diplomat. Clearly, the more to the extent that evidence comes out that MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, was not only aware of, but perhaps orchestrated what took place, it makes the case against Saudi Arabia a bit stronger. But there are much larger and many more considerations to be had. I agree with you.
And they're a pretty strong economic partner, aren't they?
They're a strong economic partner. They also obviously heavily influence the price of crude oil. They are also, in addition to being an economic partner, they're a strong military partner. And they, to a large extent, have provided a bulwark against Iran, who I think is a much greater threat to the Middle East and to the U.S.
In our final minute or so, two more issues I want to throw out. Inflation, are there worries that inflation is coming back?
I would never say that there aren't worries. I think the question you want to ask is, are they legitimate worries? I think there are some concerns. Inflation has been dormant for 10, 12, 15 years. I think one thing people have to watch, and nobody's talking about it, but it's going to get talked about at some point, either voluntarily or involuntarily, is the absolute explosion in the federal deficit, which can ultimately be inflationary because the federal government's got to borrow more and more and more money. And obviously the demand for more money on the part of the federal government increases the supply of treasuries and can jack up rates.
And my final point is about GM. You know, they made this big announcement, and now maybe the president's threatening to cut off their subsidies. And do you see possibly them looking at that decision again?
I don't. I hope they don't. I think it would be a bad move by GM. I think the person running GM, Mary Barra, has identified an opportunity to get out in front of changes in demand. The demand for 2- and 4-door sedans doesn't exist the way it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think the president, you know, he frequently lets it rip. Having said that, often his subsequent behavior doesn't match his rhetoric. I also don't really know as a practical matter how much power he has to unilaterally do what he says. I suspect
But
limited.
should we be giving subsidies to all these
That's a separate question. No, I don't think we should be. I think market demand ought to determine whether people want small or large cars, electric or internal combustion engine driven cars. I agree with you. So I'd scrap all of them.
All right, Jim Spiro, thank you very much.
Always
a great overview of what we're facing, folks. It's a very challenging environment. When we come back, we'll talk about what's going on right here in Jefferson Parish with one of our council leaders. Next, right here on Ringside. All right, let's get updated to what's going on in Jefferson Parish. Very pleased to have with us the councilwoman for At-Large, Division B. She's also the chairwoman for the Jefferson Parish Council. The Honorable Cynthia Lee-Sheng is with us. And Councilwoman, how you doing?
Good, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So a lot to talk about. There have been some good wins recently for Jefferson Parish as far as economic development.
Absolutely. You know, we end off this year, we always kind of look at how we've done this past year and this past current fiscal year. And any one of these projects would have been, you know, huge for us in a year. And this year, we've just, especially in the fall, we've been really, really busy. Having the deal signed with Avondale is huge for us, and the potential that brings for us in the next couple years, and just getting that site back into commerce and jobs there was just fantastic. And there were so many people involved in that, you know, from the congressional offices, the governor's office, our own parish administration, our council offices, our legislative delegation. So I think that was a good signing for everybody.
And that's been years of really that spot being vacant.
Years being vacant. And the exciting thing about this is, you know, it's going to be, you know, with the new internet retail, and there's some opportunities for us to, and then actually add value at that site as well. So who they're going to bring in as tenants, you know, is yet to be determined, but we're looking forward. And there's still a lot of work to be done on the site, and we're still going to work with them. But just to get that closed was a huge deal for us. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's the real growth area of the parish, right? Yes, and Ochsner's doing a lot of great things on Jefferson Highway, and we're working with them with some tax incentives there. They're going to do a beautification piece, and of course they're adding on a lot. Elmwood is exciting, you know, the Kmart development and that whole retail area.
So what is going to be happening there? We're moving away from retail?
So Elmwood, and I'm happy to say, like, my family had I don't know if I'm dating myself, and I was a little too young to dance there, but, you know, my family had the Hired Hand Saloon, which was, you know, in the days of Urban Cowboy and the Western movement. So that was a big tenant at Elmwood at the time. So it's going from a traditional retail area, and what they want to do is do a true live, work, play, shop town center. It's going to be greener. It's just going to have more of those features that we want to see in new development. And we don't really have some of those town centers, good demonstrate, you know, for people to see. Sometimes you travel, you see that. But this will be like one of the first in Jefferson Parish. So you'll see some restaurant concepts. You're going to see 262 new apartments. The apartments, you're going to be able to walk out of your floor and go straight to parking. So you're going to see that whole area redevelop. And my big push is for green infrastructure and retaining the water and building that new way. And there are going to be some green infrastructure pieces to that property that I'm really excited about. Some bioswales and some water storage features.
Let's talk, if we could, about the budget a little bit. With the change in retail and how people are not shopping as much at the malls and so forth, has that impacted the budget at all?
Well, we always talked about internet shopping and how local governments miss out on it, miss out on the sales tax, and it comes at a price to us. I mean, you think of, you know, all the trucks moving down our streets, and they're using our infrastructure, and we're not reaping the rewards. Now with Amazon going back into the stores, they're kind of flipping the whole formula back. But, you know, we've had some real strong retail wins, especially at Lakeside Mall, you know, with Zara coming in and Lego coming in. But, you know, there is a push to sort of, you know, gain some of those. And we have been collecting some of the Amazon sales. And so we have been working on that, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the budget situation looks okay?
So at the next council meeting, we always have to pass a budget for the next year before the end of the year, and I fully expect the council to do that. And it's a $652 million in terms of expenditures budget this next year that we're looking at.
That'll be a record?
I think, we grow every year. I'd have to look at it, but I would probably think it's probably a record. The interesting thing, and I always talk about, drainage is always on people's minds. And when I was looking over the budget, what stood out for me is public works is the service that we deliver as a government to our citizens. That's probably the main service that people think of us as. We have drainage, we have sewer, water, roads are the main, public works projects. Our drainage capital budget is the same as water, sewer, and roads put together.
Wow.
If you add all those three up, drainage is actually more than that. So I don't think people ever realize what the kind of resources we put towards our drainage and keeping water out of our homes and off of our properties, keeping our properties safe.
And that's important. I mean, look at the problems we had in New Orleans last year.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something that we as a region have learned to live with, but when you travel to other areas, and I talk about this and how much of our taxpayer dollar goes towards managing water, it's incredible, that we have this sort of this draw on our resources that other communities, and other people have different things. They have to manage snow, or California is managing, my goodness, the terrible wildfires that come at a public cost. So different parts of the country are dealing with different things.
Let's hit a few quick things in the final few minutes. Tell us about this committee that you're working on as far as the tax millage.
So in Jefferson Parish, we have over 90% of our taxpayer revenues is really dedicated by the voters to a source. So when you pay your sales tax or your property tax, a certain portion goes to fire, a certain portion goes to streets, a certain portion goes to drainage. And there is, on the one hand, it's great transparency, and we're very accountable to the public. But on the other hand, we lose the flexibility. And if you think of your own household budget, some years you're spending more on this, and if you fix that, then the next year that's not going to be your big expense. It's going to be something else. That's just how a budget works. And we don't really have that flexibility in local government. So we put together an incredible group of people, super smart people who are just experts in government finance, to look at this and see maybe there are some recommendations that we can do to try to loosen that up a little bit or combine some things.
So what would be the process? It would have to go before the voters?
It would have to go before the voters when we get the recommendations from them.
And when would that be?
That wouldn't be probably for a couple years. I think we'd have to really look at it, really do the numbers. So this is just the first look at, and it's a big deal to go change a millage or combine a millage. New Orleans is looking at taking away a part of the Audubon Institute millage and giving it to other groups, and they'll have to bring it before a vote of the people. But it's a lot of research.
Do you see the need at any time in the near future of increasing the millage for any kind of needs?
No, I don't see the need for that. I mean, we do have some surpluses in some areas, and I've been a big advocate. If we don't need it, we don't want to ask for it. So. And
that's a word you don't hear very often in government: surplus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So overall, in our final 30 seconds, do you think things are going well in the parish?
I think things are going very well in the parish. I do. I think, the economy is, especially this year with the big wins we've had, Fuji Oil and U.S. Foods, in addition to Avondale and Ochsner and Elmwood.
And what about the population? Is it going to start heading up, you think?
Well, we are about 440,000, so I think we're still the second largest parish. In Louisiana, with in Baton Rouge, they're after Katrina, they became number one. So a lot of younger people moving in. That's good. To the area. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, fills our housing, fills our schools with kids. Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we'll visit again soon. A lot going on, of course. That's where we're doing this show, from Jefferson Parish. All right. When we come back, we'll talk about a great ministry that is really helping some people in need. That's next, right here on Ringside. Welcome back. Very pleased to have with us now a gentleman who's going to tell us about, I think, a very incredible, important ministry. It's El Shaddai Catering, and we're going to put the site up there. You can check it out. Paul Thompson is with us, the founder. And Paul, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Very good. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create El Shaddai.
Well, I was cooking for like halfway houses, and just cooking out of my house and feeding 60 or 70 guys a week was just a little bit overbearing, and I felt God leading me to do what I'm doing now and cooking for masses. You know, we've got huge 80-gallon pots, and we cook for 3,000 or 4,000 people at a time, one cooking.
So if there's like a disaster somewhere, you know, tornado, earthquake, hurricane, flood, people need help, right? I mean, they can't access their kitchens. They can't cook for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like I've been on the road a lot. We, especially last year, because of the floods and the hurricanes, we were in, I think, 20 different cities. So we were in Beaumont, Crowley, you know, all up and down that area. In Jennings, we're in Baton Rouge. And we also went to Florida. A little place is Bayside Community Church. And great people. We got like 12,000 people in the church. And we went down and cooked for people that, I mean, they had to walk 3 or 4 miles just to get food.
Wow.
They had no electricity, no water. So we were at the central location at this church, and we ended up feeding probably 15,000 people in 3 days. So it was really awesome.
So tell us the type of food you provide for these folks. What do you normally cook for them?
Well, we're not like a normal 501c3 that cooks hot dogs and red beans and rice, although we could cook red beans and rice. We actually cook pretty much gourmet food. My jambalaya, you know, has 300 pounds of meat in it in an 80-gallon pot. So we make really gourmet food. We cook, one of my specialties is chicken sauce pecan, but we can cook just about anything you can cook in a pot.
Wow. So when you travel to these things, I mean, it's a big operation. You got to take these big pots with you, right?
It's huge. I have a big trailer, and my biggest thing is, you know, finding volunteers. Of course, when you go into a disaster area, usually the churches will provide people to help, but they don't have the experience.
Right.
So feeding, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 people that are sitting, you have to be organized. So I got to get out there and tell them how to set up and what to do. And it's really pretty neat because the people are so gracious, first of all, that you just showed up and that you're cooking for so many people. So it's very rewarding.
So people can get involved in a lot of different ways, but one of them is volunteering, right?
Right, absolutely.
Can they go to the website and sign up there?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so that's elshaddai-catering.org. You see it right there. People can also donate to this cause.
We would love some donations.
And tell us where that money would go.
Well, I don't take any salary out of this, and no money comes out to pay for anybody. It all goes into feeding people. That's it. And we could use donations. Mainly what I'm looking to do right now is to kind of not expand El Shaddai Catering, but to set up other places where they have disasters. And we did that in Florida with Bayside Community Church. We gave them a whole trailer, cooking pots. They were kind of blown away. You know, they got 12,000, 14,000 people, and they, you know, when I showed up with the pots with Bayside Community Church on it, the pastor's just like, what? You know, he's freaking out because he said, you're sowing into my church. He couldn't believe it. So it was very rewarding, and they were able to go help the people with the hurricane in Florida this year. They went and fed, I don't know how many people, but I know they got like 25 people in that church that's what they want to do is cook.
And the thing about it is the appreciation must be so heartwarming to be able to help people, and a lot of these people are probably, you know, moved to tears.
It's unbelievable, some of the reaction you get. You know, I'm just cooking food. It's not a big deal. It's something I like to do. And just the reaction you get from people, they are so gracious to get a hot meal. I mean, we're in Beaumont, and some of those people were locked in their homes for 4 or 5 days. Cajun Navy came, picked up food, brought it out there. The stories that came back brought you to tears. People saying, I didn't think we're going to eat for another week, and you're showing up with food. It's a little thing, but it's really a big thing.
Well, I think it's wonderful that we have so many people from Louisiana, like you, like the Cajun Navy, that go respond when people are in crisis. I think it says a lot about our state and people that want to help others. So I think it's a tremendous thing that you're doing. But you also help folks in the local area too, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We've cooked for so many places. I think I've cooked probably about at least every other week for the last 6 weeks. We're cooking locally to help out churches, wherever God leads us. We do a lot with Fellowship for Christian Athletes, which, they have a lot of money to play with, so we feed all these Christian athletes. We've been a bunch of different high schools, and that's a lot of fun.
So this ministry for you is probably something that takes you away from other business activities that you're involved in, but it's obviously something I can just see that you love doing.
Yes, I think serving God is more important and serving people than what I do in my business life. Although I'm pretty successful in that, so I had the ability to take off whenever I want.
Yeah, that's nice that you do have that flexibility.
Yes.
And certainly I would assume if this thing continues to grow, you're going to need more and more time.
I'm looking forward to just expanding. I really am. And I need people, I need money to do that. And, if I could set up other locations, I don't have to go to Florida. I got a place in Florida that's set up, they can go look. Same thing here in Louisiana. There's so many places that people are looking for cooking ministry. So if people look at it like, hey, I'm not just serving, you're serving literally thousands and thousands of people. You have $100 donation or $1,000 donation goes a long, long way.
And can impact a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Paul Thompson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
And
I appreciate
we're going to certainly encourage people to go to elshaddai-catering.org, get involved, volunteer, donate, and support this very important ministry. All right, when we come back, it's time for the final round. It's my commentary of the week. That's next, right here on Ringside. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Time for the final round. It's my commentary of the week. Now, over the 20 years of our Ringside shows, TV and radio, we've established an annual tradition of awarding our Turkey of the Year for the holiday season. We started to recognize those individuals who distinguish themselves, politicians, celebrities, in a particularly idiotic way, turkeys. Seems appropriate since the turkey commonly regarded as one of the dumbest animals on the planet. Very tasty, too. Every year, the competition is fierce, for there are many deserving potential nominees. This year, our radio listeners nominated several dozen individuals and groups, all with outstanding credentials, to become our Ringside Politics Turkey of the Year. Nevertheless, the clear winner this year with the most votes, the best choice for our 2018 award, House Speaker Paul Ryan. This moderate establishment Republican, very weak House Speaker. Ever since Donald Trump burst upon the political scene, Ryan has relished his opportunities to appear before the media and make critical comments. After the president's 2005 locker room comments to Access Hollywood host Billy Bush were improperly released to the public, taped without his knowledge, Ryan told fellow Republicans that he would no longer, quote, defend Trump. Of course, the president achieved victory without him. No help from Ryan. In fact, he has been working to, quote, make America great again without any assistance, really, from the top congressional leader of the Republican Party. Ryan has not championed many of the major issues on the president's agenda, such as funding of a border wall, even though it was a prime reason why Republicans took control of the White House and Congress after the 2016 election. So it's no surprise when Ryan deserted his party and his colleagues by announcing his retirement from Congress several months before the end of his term. Ryan's leadership was pathetic. His fundraising for the GOP candidates anemic. While finding little time to show support for the president and his agenda, Ryan never missed an opportunity to blast his commander-in-chief. Sadly, Ryan did not focus on holding the House in the midterm election, so now the next speaker will be liberal Democrat Nancy Pelosi. The blame for this debacle does not rest with President Trump, who won major victories for several Republican U.S. Senate candidates, but directly with Paul Ryan, who leaves his post with few victories and leaves his party in a weakened position. Clearly, Paul Ryan is the right choice for our 2018 Ringside Politics Turkey of the Year. Okay, folks, if you've got a question or comment you'd like to share with us here at Ringside, please email me at jeff@ringsidepolitics.com. Hey, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/ringsidepolitics. That's it for tonight's show. I'm Jeff Cruere, and keep in mind here at Ringside, we don't pull any punches.